Board of Education meeting, February 11th, 2019. Roll call, please.
Mr. Abbott.
Present.
Mr. Bratton.
Present.
Mr. Johnson.
Present.
Mr. Mellis.
Present.
Ms. Parker.
Mrs. Parker. Is the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to approval of the agenda. There is an agenda. Starting with 9, the superintendent's recommendations and reports. Under C, 3D, page 3, 3D. Then moving on, also on page 3, 9, and then 9A will be Group E, Experience 0. And then moving on to 13 on page 4, the correction or the addition, approved Molly Frost, Muskingum University for field experience placement with Sarah Wooding at intermediate school beginning February 22nd, 2019 through March 5th, 2019.
Wait, don't we have to do that before we adjourn, please? That was on the wrong page.
No, it's on page 4 at the very top, right underneath 12.
Got it. I missed it.
Number 13,
Got
we
it.
added right
Yep.
there, then we'll vote.
I missed it. That was on the last one.
Everybody good?
Yep.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Bratton,
Second.
and seconded by Mr. Johnson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bratton.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Mellis.
Yes.
And Mr. Abbott.
Yes. Okay, moving on for approval of the minutes of the January 14th, 2019 meeting. Anyone see corrections or concerns? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mills. I'll second that. Seconded by Mr. Abbott. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mellis.
Yes.
Mr. Abbott.
Yes.
Mr. Bratton.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to public participation.
We have our, tonight we have our middle school administration with us, giving us updates about some things going on at the middle school level. And I think they've invited some students and their families here this evening as well, and maybe a couple teachers as well. So Mr. Young, Mr. Natchet, it's all you.
All right, well, thanks for having me and us. I just want to talk today a little bit to the board. First of all, thanks for having us, and also talk a little bit about some things we do that are outside of the typical day and outside of athletics too. We all hear a lot about the athletics that go on. We all hear about classes that they have when they come home. But I want to talk about a few programs and clubs that we have at the middle school, and brought some people with you to talk a little bit more about that as well. We do some mental health programs at the middle school. As you know, their brains are going all over the place in middle school. In 8th grade, we do signs of suicide with our health teacher, where they get screening. We've had a lot of feedback from parents that appreciate that we do this. It's not a real in-depth screening, but just kind of some questions and some discussion with the students about mental health and signs of suicide. And you know, if there are some warning signals, parents are notified about possible more counseling for that. The recovery center comes in and also works with the health class, and they're also working with the 7th grade teachers right now, talking about alcohol, drugs, and tobacco. Obviously, talking about jewels and things of that nature too that are going on too, and how that's kind of a gateway thing for these students. We've also talked to 5th grade, talked to them about coming to 5th grade, talking about some Too Good for Violence, which is a discussion of conflict resolution. That's an age where they have a lot of conflict and arguments, and they have to learn how to get through with those arguments. Having a lot of recess too, so you know, we don't have 3 referees out there for all those kids, or 5, and that that are out there. We also have a speaker coming on the 28th. He was originally coming on the 1st, but I saw the snowstorm coming, that was a couple Fridays ago, and I rescheduled him for the 28th. He's a magician, an African-American individual, and he's gonna talk a little about anti-bullying and also a little bit about Black History Month. He's hitting the tail end of Black History Month. I think that's good for our students and our community, to hear a little bit more and, become a little more aware of those kind of issues. Clubs that we do, we have Student Council Club. They do Mrs. Dybel and Mrs. Cooley, our teachers do a great job with these clubs. They don't have to do this stuff, they take their own time, and we really appreciate the time that the teachers and the adults do to carry out these clubs. It's really important. It gives them, makes them be a part of something, and the Student Council does a great job. They do the Relay for Life, and they do some other things. There were some carnations today at lunch, so they do some things like that. We have a Builders Club. Mrs. Johnson, Mrs. Conrad work together on that. It's kind of a club that goes into the Key Club at the high school you've probably heard of, so it's kind of the beginning Key Club members, I guess you would say. We also have the Photography Club. Mrs. Evans works with that. She does a good job with that. She's got a small group of students that are really into the photography part. And Soul Sisters, it's really a neat thing. It started the day we had, I don't know, probably 100 5th and 6th grade girls running through the hallways today. Abby Shirky, a former student, does that, but also with Anna Braille at the high school. And I believe Mrs. Conrad and Miss Harris. Miss Mason's helping. Miss Harris is about ready to have a child, so she's probably not going to do a whole lot of 5Ks. She would have not been there for too long. The robotics team that I know you hear a lot about, we had a couple competition teams that went, and Mrs. Cottle also does the invention convention with that. And last but not least, some people that I brought today, Science Club. Mrs. Engbert and Mrs. Dybel work, with the Science Club. I brought them in to kind of talk to you a little bit about how that's changed over the last couple of years in the science fair. And they brought 3 students, and they can introduce them. Okay.
Well, I'm Pam Engbert, if I've never met anybody, and this is Abby Dybel. Last year, it was our first year doing Science Club. Before, Science Fair was mandatory for just our enrichment students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and kind of reworking things, we decided to start a Science Club at the middle school level, because there is one at the high school as well, and Science Fair is a part of it, so they know before applying to get in that that's something that they're going to do, and it's been really successful. Last year we had about 60 kids involved, and this year we have about 60. We had our science fair was last week. We had 40 projects. There were 15 total groups and 25 individual projects. And we do a lot of things other than science fair, but it's one of the main priorities up until like this month. And then usually our meetings are twice a month, and we do half science fair, half some sort of activity that Mrs. Dybel comes up. I'm kind of the science fair person. She's more of the activity guru and getting all these kids organized and supplies and everything. And it's just kind of helping our kids to really enjoy, it's something for these kids to do that enjoy science on an everyday basis. And it's a lot of fun, and we've really enjoyed doing it. But what we've decided to bring in, we have our 3 science fair winners. These 3 ladies I've been with them since they were in 6th grade working on science fair, and these 3 ladies received perfect scores on their science fair project. And if you haven't been involved in science fair, which I know most of you have, maybe not Mr. Abbott, I don't know how much you know about science fair, but I know the rest of them have. They're scored twice by 2 judges. So they have one score out of 40%, 40, and another score out of 40. And these 3 ladies all received a perfect 40 out of 40 from both of their judges. So they were just gonna take a couple of minutes and just tell you about their project, why they chose to do what they did, and kind of what they saw. So these are 8th grade ladies who I'm sure will be very wanted in the high school science club. I am very, I don't really want them to go, but there's nothing I can really do about that, but I want them to stay. But I'm thinking maybe next year we can get some high school participation with some of our middle schoolers. I think that would, help. So I'm gonna let them kind of tell you a couple minutes. Emily, do you want to start us off? This is Miss Emily Swope. I'll let you tell them just a couple things.
My project was titled The Effect of Seed Storage Conditions on the Drought Tolerance of Soybean Plants. And since 1900, more than 2 billion people have been affected by drought. So I wanted to do a project that would help soybean plants to grow under the stresses of drought. So I tested 3 different storage conditions: room temperature, refrigerator, and freezer. And I let the soybean seeds stay in their storage condition for a week, and then I took them out and I planted them in drought conditioned soil, which did not have enough water. And I let them grow for 12 days, and then I analyzed their root length, their shoot length, and I found their vigor index to determine which storage condition was the best. And the soybean plants in which their seeds were stored in the freezer had the best plants in the drought conditions. So in order to combat drought conditions, you can store your soybean seeds in the freezer.
Okay, this is Miss Kennedy Breen.
My project was on reducing bacteria in the kitchen, and I was testing to find the combination of the type of cutting board you use and the disinfectant you use to eliminate the most bacteria. The disinfectants I used were bleach, 409, Greenworks, a homemade disinfectant that used essential oils, white vinegar, and baking soda, and I used a control of distilled water. And I tested the boards were plastic, bamboo, and antimicrobial. I decided to test this because I think it's a very important topic. For example, there's 200 times more bacteria on cutting boards than on toilet seats, and 1 in 6 Americans get a foodborne illness each year. And out of the people who get foodborne illnesses each year in America, 80 to 90% of them come from food prepared at home. My hypothesis was that the combination that would eliminate the most bacteria was bleach on an antimicrobial board. And after testing it, I had minimal results, and I looked back at my procedure, and there were a lot of things that I could have done differently that would have been more effective. So I gathered more knowledge and changed my procedure, which was a great learning process for me, learning about how things don't always work out the way you plan, especially in science. So I was able to do my project again, and when I did it again, bamboo was the worst cutting board. And that could have been because of the grooves and ridges in bamboo and how it is porous, unlike the other 2 cutting boards I tested. And the best cutting board turned out to be plastic. The best disinfectant was 409, and the worst was the homemade disinfectant. And in my testing, I found an outlier that had a lot of growth. Like, I couldn't even count all of it. So I counted 1/4 of the growth, and I multiplied it by 4 to find an estimate. And I excluded it from my averages just because it could have skewed it and made it very different from what the actual results could be. And I think that outlier could have been caused by, again, in the bamboo, because the outlier was from bamboo, it could have been caused by a groove in the bamboo cutting board.
I have a question. What if you use soap and water? Because that's what I do. I'm just curious to see how that works.
It's recommended that you use soap and water, and you use a disinfectant, and you put it in the dishwasher, just because of how dangerous it is.
But you're assuming that somebody our board members and administrators, that someone in the house is cooking. Once you get to our age.
And then our last lady is Grace Cruz.
So my project was saliva as a treatment for acne vulgaris. Over 100 million people in the United States suffer from acne. Acne vulgaris is just the most common type of acne. And the United States spends over $50 billion on acne vulgaris, so I wanted to research a natural, cost-effective solution. And I found saliva that came up a lot when I was researching. And so I tested cat, dog, and human saliva on 10 different petri dishes that I grew from swabbing people's actual acne. Over 15 days, I treated it with 3 of them with cat, 3 with dog, and 3 with human saliva, and the last one I left alone as my control. And I hypothesized that the human saliva would most effectively kill the acne vulgaris in comparison with dog or cat saliva. But after 15 days of testing, I found that cat saliva had killed the most acne bacteria. I got the results by over 5 days over the 15 testing days. I measured the surface area of the petri dish and the surface area that the bacteria had covered. And I got the average percent decrease of each one. And the cat saliva had an average percent decrease of 26.5%. The dog saliva had an average percent decrease of 11.3%. and the human saliva only decreased 8.4%. So after I had started testing, I thought that maybe human saliva would grow more bacteria, but it didn't. And so I was wrong, but that was okay because hypotheses are often wrong when you're doing science fair, but that's okay because I mean, you still research.
You received a perfect 3 years in a row.
I got a question. How do you get the cat to spit on the?
I opened the cheek of my cat and I put a pipette in the base of it and I extracted 0.5 milliliters.
Or furball.
I'd also like to point out that these three ladies are also in jazz band who meet after school on Tuesdays, and that's also when our meetings are. So they didn't have a lot of face-to-face with me or with Mrs. Dybel, and that just shows how much that they did not only at home, but with their parents. And I know we had a lot of conversations, Kennedy included, we had a lot of email conversations of figuring out the best way to do things and go back and forth, but any day I would take, all of the kids were good, all of their projects were so good, they worked so hard, but I did want to, before they go to the high school and wow you at the high school, wanted you to see these really, that's all we
I noticed that Chad mentioned knowing about the snow, and I was wondering when the superintendent and the high school principal were going to make their own song up about snow days and such like we did in the
That's way out of the box for me.
Way out of the box, that's what I asked him about.
Tell you what, hey, congratulations to you three. What's amazing is listening to you, you truly have a deep understanding of your projects, and you're able to talk to us about it and explain it. So, you know, I know there's always a lot of controversy with science fair projects, but I think it's evident that you guys have, you and many other students have a much deeper understanding of science, and just congratulations to you and your families and your teachers and club advisors. You guys did an amazing job, and you always do. But science is messy, isn't it? It's kind of ugly sometimes. My wife is a science teacher, so she likes all that stuff. But sometimes it's kind of messy. But you three are definitely three miniature scientists right now, well on your way to big things.
And Ms. Ingrid mentioned before, it was just kind of the enrichment students and classes did science fair. Now it's really open to anybody that's interested in this kind of thing.
I mean, the percentage of just enrichment kids is so low.
We had so many that wanted to do it, and we were like, they
There was
couldn't,
only-
at that point in time, they couldn't.
Yeah, and out of all of our kids that we had, there was only one that didn't do a project, and he was completely okay with it, completely fine with it. No, you know, we were okay with it. He knew, you know.
He knew he couldn't get it done. It
Yeah.
was just.
Yeah. So that's we're pretty easy.
Good job.
Very good job.
Thank you.
John.
Thanks.
Is there any other?
No.
Mr. Matthew, you good? Okay.
Sure. Okay, moving on to treasurer's report, recommendations and reports.
Thank you. Item A is approve the January financials for a total expense of $11,416,367.88. Of that, approximately $9.45 million were just consortium expenses. Just quickly on page 15 of your board packet, electronic copy, the third of our 4 quarterly income tax receipts occurs in January. Unlike the first 2, this one was a little bit lower than projected. It was close, about $9,300 lower. The gross total growth from the previous collection in the same time last year was just 0.39%. So that was certainly behind what our first 2 collections had grown with the quarterly distributions. January also marks the semi-annual, if you think back to when the casino legislature passed in Ohio, part of the caveat of that legislation was to distribute some of the proceeds to local government, and that's continued on a semi-annual basis. A little under $55,000, which has been pretty steady at about $50 to $55 per student for Ohio schools. This was the first month where we kind of really exceeded our expenditure estimates. This one we kind of knew it was coming here, but I just wanted you to see kind of an example of, we had 2 special needs classroom aides and 1 transportation aide, all of which that we had to add that was necessitated on various student needs. But again, that's kind of an example of that wasn't included in the initial budget, but certainly some of those unexpected things that come along.
So that's the minus 21.73 then on the revenues page or not?
That is, if you look at the green report, it's page 18, it's down on the .03030. So purchase services were 84,000 higher than estimated. We had estimated 178,311. It came in at 262,483. So certainly that put us into a position where for the month we were about a little over 84,000.
For the year then.
But for the year it's close. We're within $6,620. So we'll monitor it every month. We're higher than we were expecting on revenues. So we always look at that .06010. That's our bottom line, and we're trying to get that to a budget surplus. So any questions on the financial statements or the checks that were written during the month?
I have one.
Sure.
Okay, my question, I just want to kind of know what exactly we spent them on, but I mean, if it's, see if you understand that too. So why didn't we spend $4,000+ on legal fees or to Bricker Network in the last month?
A lot of that, to be honest, is within the special education area to make sure that.
Special education and personnel.
Yeah.
I wonder if personnel.
Any other questions for Mr. Bitten? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Bratton, second by Mr. Johnson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Mellis?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Item B is approve the amounts and rates as determined by the Fairfield County Budget Commission and authorize the necessary tax levies and thus certify them to the county auditor. I had given these to you in January, but now that I went before the Fairfield County Budget Commission, the next step is for the board to actually approve this so they can collect this on our behalf. Again, we've talked about general fund, total millage, 42.3, effective mills were 20 mil 4. Our debt service fund consists of 2 bond issues, 10.10 mils, 8.5 effective mills, and our newly passed permanent improvement levy, 1.2 total mills. It goes on in the first year at the ballot millage, which is 1.2 mils.
So do you have to personally go to the Budget Commission?
Yeah. I go before them and
Well, you said it sounded like you did.
go through a hearing and justify to them why we need these collections.
Did you drag Tom along with you?
I don't mind. He's got enough other meetings to go to. So.
Any other questions for Mr. Bitten? Seeing none, is there a motion? So moved. Motion by Mr. Johnson. I'll second that. Mr. Abbott. Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Mellis?
Yes.
Item C is approve the best value rating form in accordance with our purchasing policy DJF-R to evaluate bids and proposals for goods and services purchased with federal funds. This is truly just simply driven by a policy that we had passed through one of our recent policy PDQs. On page 37 of your electronic copy, it's basically those last 3 bullet points that necessitate the board approve. If we're going to purchase anything with food service funds or IDEA funds or title funds, those that are funded from federal sources, we have to have a scoring sheet. It could be something as simple as an ESC service. It could be a curriculum, a piece of curriculum. But basically, that last number 3 says identify all requirement and fulfill all other factors to be used in evaluating bids or proposals. So we normally don't spend a lot. We don't get a lot of federal funding, and 95% of it goes to our personnel to pay for payroll. So it won't be used that much, but we will have it in place in case we have to solicit bids or anything for goods and services.
But they do stick their nose in quite a bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Any questions, Mr. Bigham? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mills. Second by Mr. Bratton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mellis?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
And finally, need official board approval to establish the permanent improvement fund. Probably should have done this in January, but with everything else going on, it slipped through the cracks. But as we begin to collect the tax revenue and make expenditures, we do need official board approval to establish the fund based upon ORC authority listed before you.
Any questions for Mr. Bivens regarding this? Seeing none, is there a motion? So moved. Motion made by Mr. Johnson. Second by Mr. Bratton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Millis?
Yes.
And Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
I have one last question while we're in finance, and it's not a big finance question. I've been asked this at several basketball games. What do JV and varsity referees make? I said, I really don't know. I tried to look it up on here, I didn't see any checks written,
I think,
just out of curiosity.
I think it's like $45 a game, but the varsity officials are often different than the
I thought they
JV
were.
officials, but.
They get mileage too?
I think through Arbiter.
Through
I
our-
think
we-
through Ohio High School Athletic Association.
Okay. Well, I told them I thought that was.
We don't pay them directly anymore, which is
I know,
nice.
right, I didn't think it.
We have a third party that,
Anyway.
that does that.
Thank you.
Moving on to old business. Approve the following policies as presented, 1 through 7. Your motion?
So moved.
Second? I'll second that. Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Millis?
Yes.
Moving on to superintendent's recommendations.
Okay, 9A, superintendent's report. Every board member, I actually sent an email to Ms. Parker a little bit ago. You have an invitation in front of you. I think the ESC has done this in the past, but they are hosting an all-county board dinner. And I don't think they did it last year, but the year before they did. It's gonna be held on March 6th in the evening at 6 p.m. Gonna have a couple speakers, Craig Burford from the executive director, who's the executive director of the Ohio Educational Service Center Association, and Tom Ash, who's with BASA, and he'll be visiting us. He's in the area of governmental relations. Yeah.
I know him from what I used to do.
Yeah, but you're all welcome. I actually encourage you to attend if you can. I know the other county school boards will have members there. I don't know if all 5 will be there. They can do this in a way that they split you up and keep you kind of separate. Obviously, business can't be discussed, but they have different areas where they will seat us. But there's going to be a couple topics focusing on some of the legislative things and also the budget. The state budget's always a big question for school boards. So that's going to be on March 6th in the evening at the ESC in Lancaster. It's down by the Anchor Hocking, down off like Fair and Wilson. You can let me know if you're going to attend, and I will send an RSVP to Courtney Stapleton, who's the secretary for the superintendent. But I wanted to bring that to your attention. So just let me know in the next couple days, and I will send our reservation in together. Okay.
So you get big to pay for that?
What's that?
So you get big to pay for that?
Do they charge?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think they're charging us actually.
Oh, okay.
ESC is providing it.
I didn't see the price either.
Yeah.
I was just teasing Travis.
Yeah.
That's all right.
And then there's an OSBA Central Region Spring Conference on March 13th. Just want to acknowledge that Mr. Millis was notified by Kid Miller-Smith, who's the Central Region liaison, that Mr. Millis will be receiving a 10-year award for his time on the school boards at Amanda Clear Creek and at Bloom Carroll. Mark, if you would like to attend, I have no problem. I'd love to go with you. If anybody else wants to go, you're welcome. There's several school boards that attend. They serve a dinner. They have some student performances. But any of us can go. And I don't know if you want to have any discussion about it right now. If any of you have any interest, it's usually open by 8 o'clock, 8:30. It's up at Villa Milano, up on the west of Villa.
That's what they always have that.
Yeah. It's March 13th, 6 p.m. And Mark, you don't know if you're available?
No, I just think they can send me the certificate. I think I'm supposed to get something for all the stuff I attended the last couple of years.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, OSBA stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. I think. I don't know. They sent me 2 letters. I went to say, well, it was like, it was the same stuff.
If you change your mind, then call me or email me in the next couple of days, and
Okay.
we can get the reservations taken care of, okay? Rod and And Joe, we need to set up a policy committee meeting. We just got the February PDQ from OSBA to update some policies, due mainly to legislative changes. So I will email both of you and we'll try to find the date and time. We meet with Travis, myself, the 2 liaisons from the board, and then Jennifer participates in that as well. She takes care of getting all the updates and then sending that to OSBA. So it'll probably take, with this update, it'll probably take a half hour to 45 minutes if we bust through it. And you know, I'll send you guys an email.
Newbie brings donuts and coffee.
That's a one time, right? Not for lunch. And then, I just wanted to give you a heads up, I've talked to Greg Schaefer, the president of the Athletic Boosters. As you know, the Athletic Boosters and the Music Boosters, they do great things for our students in performing arts and also in athletics, and specifically the Athletic Boosters. And they're perfectly fine with me communicating this. We're going to be getting something out in one of our e-newsletters. But they're in desperate need. They're welcoming new officers, parent involvement. They've tried. We've put out letters, but the current officers of the Athletic Boosters right now, they don't have any children in our school district at all. They do it out of the goodness of their heart. It's not a paid position. It is a true service to the district and to our community. But what people don't understand is they often think that we're spending money, district money, on uniforms and some of these facility improvements. Like the concession stand or the entrance to Carl Fell. And while we have spent a little bit of money to support their overall project, they have certainly raised the funds and every few years provide uniforms for every sport you can think of, grades 7 through 12, and they contribute in a major way that our students benefit from. So we are looking for, if you have ideas as board members, of parents in our community that are looking to get involved, that may be involved in BCYA, that could transition into the Athletic Boosters, recruit them, tell them, bring them to a meeting, tell them to go to a meeting, but the Boosters is welcoming new leadership. They want to be able to hand it off. They're scared that if they just stop, the work the Boosters does is going to go away with it. And so kind of keep your eyeball on people in the community that might be able to step up and help and have those conversations. And encourage them to, they can contact me, they can contact Greg Schaefer, they can contact Chad Little, the athletic director, but we need some parents to step up and kind of a new generation to get involved, okay? We've been having, the design process continues. We're in the, just started the design development phase. Today, we just had a schematic design review with OSCC and Summit Construction, which is our construction manager, our architect, and the district, and a couple board members from the facilities management participated in that. But we're continuing to work through the schematic development stage and now getting into design development and looking at the budget and the project. And this will, it'll continue to fluctuate throughout the design development as we look at product. But I definitely today saw a benefit in the process of the construction manager at risk, where our construction firm and our architect are sitting there with the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, and we're addressing items right now that may present a problem down the road and figuring out how to work through those. And there will be a couple more reviews during each design phase. So we've had the POR, we've had the schematic design. We still have a meeting that will take place with OSCC and our construction management firm and our architect in the district during design development, and then another one during the construction document phase. But the site plan and the floor plan have really come together. Some minor changes, nothing that changes the project overall. But it's good to see how that CMR process benefits the district up front, rather than going through all of this with our designer and then having huge issues later on with our construction management firm if we were to bring them on at the very end of this project. So it was a good meeting, and things are never perfect, but just wanted to give you an update there. This week, our architect and several different departments will be meeting. I'm sorry, our food service department will be meeting on Thursday, and myself and Travis. Marilyn Enyer is our food service director, and the head cooks of our elementary schools will be meeting with a firm out of Indianapolis that Shore Architects uses to help design kitchens and the layout of kitchens. So we will be holding that meeting on Thursday. And then next week on the 20th, We have a full day schedule from 9:30 in the morning until 4:30. We are meeting with focus groups where we have teacher reps from each grade level, and all different departments, related arts, music, art, phys ed, maintenance, administration, special education, intervention services. We are all holding focus group sessions throughout the day where we will be looking at their area of the building and starting to talk about the product and the layout of the inside of the building, cabinetry, teacher workstations, all those kinds of things. So
who's gonna decide, I mean, sure, out of curiosity, so who's going to decide, you know, bookcases,
yeah,
the color of the paint on the wall, I mean, seriously.
So
Yes,
we have,
all that. Cause I can see that could be a knockdown drag out with some.
Yeah. So we have, a board presentation, but that's short, we'll be doing in April, on April 8th, kind of towards the end of design development, where the board approves each phase, which the board has done with the POR and schematic design will take place.
So when's the board meeting for that one? Isn't it on the?
It's April 8th, April 8th, I think,
Okay.
yeah, but they'll be
I think
here.
I'm back by then.
Yeah, they'll be here to present some of that, but, you know, the teachers, obviously will work through that with district leadership and approval by the board, as we continue through design development over the next couple months. So I just wanted to kind of give you an update on where things are there. They're still looking at the early site package sometime in July or August, and then footings and those kinds of things will take place in I believe October. Okay, so.
What about as far as safety goes? I mean, we can incorporate some of the same things you got in this building with.
Yeah, a lot of it's, even upgrades, some improvements that maybe, you know, this building is very safe, but there were even improvements that could be made. So OFCC, and the architectural firm, they've designed a lot of buildings and they've learned a lot over the years with safety. But this building is certainly designed with safety in mind, from the site plan to, where children are during the day and when they're visible. I think we've got a good floor plan.
I just wanted to ask in case somebody asked me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that you'll see with the site plan that help with the safety and the layout of the building. All right, moving on. Any questions about any of those items? Okay. Moving on to 9B, under students and programs, approve a 2-hour delay schedule for the high school on April 10th through the 12th, 2019, and April 15th and 16th, 2019 for the administration of the end of course exams. That is so typically our freshmen and sophomores are the most tested groups for the end of course exams. This will allow us, the middle school and high school administration have worked to get all the portable devices, laptops that students are tested, that they use to test on the end of course exams into one building at one time, and we can test grades, you know, 9 and 10 at the same time, like English 9 and English 10, and basically it reduces the number of testing days down to half, so we don't lose a lot of instruction this way. Kids can still come to school, they can still ride the bus to school. Those that come to school early at the normal time will have to wait in the cafeteria for a study hall if they're not taking a test, but this is for high school only. All the rest of the district, K to 8 will be on a normal time. Okay, and this is typical with the previous state assessment called the Ohio Graduation Test.
So is this just 9, 10 doing that?
No, the end of course exams aren't specific to grades anymore. They're subject areas.
Or subject areas, I mean.
Yeah, Algebra 1, Geometry, English 9, English 10, Biology, US History, Government. So if you take those subjects, then you take that test. So it's not necessarily by grade level anymore. Okay?
Any questions for Mr. Hahn regarding this item? None, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Millis. Second. Second by Mr. Bratton. A roll call, please.
Mr. Millis?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Okay, 9C, Personnel and Employment, approve number 1, approve substitute list number 7 for February 2019 as submitted by the Fairfield County Educational Service Center. Number 2, approve a request for a salary column change by Holly Lovelace from bachelor's degree with 150 semester hours to a master's degree pursuant to receipt of official transcripts and verification of hours. Number 3, approve the following unpaid leave and dock days, A through C, and then add addendum item D, please. 9C3. And number 4, approve the FMLA leave request of Taylor Mavis, first grade teacher effective February 4th, 2019 through approximately May 1st, 2019. Number 5, approve the FMLA leave request of Amber Harris, 6th grade intervention specialist, effective on or about February 25th, 2019 through approximately April 29th, 2019. Number 6, approve the employment of Christopher Hughes as a long-term substitute teacher for Amber Harris at the middle school, effective on or about February 25th, 2019 through approximately April 29th, 2019. Number 7, approve the employment of Rachel Woolley as a substitute bus aide for the 18-19 school year, effective January 7th, 2019. Number 8, approve the employment of Hayden Morris as an IT department worker for the 18-19 school year for up to 40 hours at the summer IT worker hourly rate. Number 9, approve the following academic supplemental contracts for the 1920 school year, and that would be Caitlin Toad, color guard instructor, and we made a correction that is Group E, experience 0. Number 10, approve the following athletic supplemental contracts for the 18-19 school year as presented A through L. Number 11, approve the following athletic department volunteers for the 18-19 school year pending timely receipt of all verifications and background checks as presented A through D. Number 12, approve the following volunteers for the 18-19 school year pending successful background check results. And that would be A, your Group A volunteers with background checks on file. And number 13 from the addendum. Number 13 from the addendum, approve Molly Frost from Muskingum University for field experience placement with Sarah Wooding at the intermediate school beginning February 22nd, 2019 through March 5th, 2019. And we have voting.
Did we get that done?
I'm sorry, it should be paperclip.
There's also email.
It should be, Jefferson should paperclip it to the back.
No, it's back. Actually, it was a email back.
I got it. Yeah, it was in.
You got it?
Whatever.
It's over there.
Are there any questions? See none, is there a motion? Motion made by Mr. Johnson,
Second.
second by Mr. Bratton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Bratton,
Yes.
Mr. Millis,
Yes.
Mr. Abbott.
Yes.
That was one thing I forgot to do before I left the house. I meant to do that about 4:30, and I checked to see if there was anything.
D, under contracts and agreements, approve a contractual agreement with Denise Barty to provide occupational therapy services to Green Care Local School District for a term to begin August 1st, 2019 through June 12th, 2022. This is a renewal. We contract this service out. It's much more affordable than hiring our own OT, and we're billed hourly for that for the students that need OT services.
So it's no change.
It's no change. There was an hourly rate increase.
Yeah, a little over 1%. Not bad.
I thought the contract was kind of in depth. How many teachers was it?
2 or 3. She does a great job.
Any other questions regarding this? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Millis, I'll second that. Roll call, please.
Mr. Millis,
Yes.
Mr. Abbott,
Yes.
Mr. Bratton,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, and there's nothing under E or F. Mr. Abbott, back to new business.
Okay, moving on to new business. A, approved treasurer's contract for Travis Bigham effective August 1st, 2019 through July 31st, 2023.
Wow, we talked about this for a while.
Are there any questions regarding this? Is there a motion?
So.
Motion made by Mr. Bratton, second by Mr. Johnson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bratton,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Millis,
Yes.
Mr. Abbott.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item 11, board reports and information. A, Board of Education liaison updates, facility management.
Just from today, I kind of gave you an update already.
What's our next meeting schedule? Do we have anything on the books?
No, they will schedule, once they're done with design development, they will schedule another review for DD. Yeah.
Moving on to personnel and labor management, Mr. Millis or Bratton?
No, we just covered part of that. Devin, we doing what? July, you talked about?
Later, yeah.
Later.
Okay, moving on to the OSBA representative, Millis?
Nope. Okay.
Nothing, moving on to policy.
we'll get a, like you said, we'll get a meeting here real soon.
Safety, health, and wellness, nothing to report. Finance, nothing to report. Moving on to B, upcoming PTO booster, Board of Education meetings. February 11th, athletic boosters, BC cafeteria. February 12th, music boosters, 6:30 at the BCHS Media Center. February 15th, no school. February 18th, no school. The 20th is high school PTO. The 27th, the Board of Education planning session, 6 p.m. at the BC Middle School Library. 3/5 of 19 is the elementary PTO meeting, the BC Intermediate School Library. On March 11th, Records Commission meeting at 5:45. And March 11th, Board of Education regularly scheduled meeting at 6 o'clock. That is at the intermediate school. Moving on to item 12, motion for adjournment.
I have a question. My question is, I don't get this thing too hard. Anyway, my question is, are we not having an executive session to talk about your trip to OGE?
I can, there's nothing.
I'm not saying we need to have it,
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, there's nothing really new.
Okay.
At this time, when I hear something, I was gonna schedule.
Okay. That's all I was asking about.
Okay. With no further questions, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Bratton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Bratton,
Yes.
Mr. Mellis,
Yes.
Mr. Abbott.
Yes. Okay, timeout, 6:47.